I'd like to call Walter Ricciotti on stage. He's the managing partner of the Made in Italy Fund.
Grazie David, buongiorno a tutti.
Thank you, David. Good morning, everybody. We'll listen to interesting vision of the market, and we'll listen to the consumption attitude. Another variable in the food and wine sector is the M&A side. So I'd like to give you an overview of M&A in food and wine. Of course, from the standpoint of a private equity investor. You've all seen the video, so I would not present again the partnership with Pan Bianco. We started our partnership a few years ago, and we are managing the Made in Italy Fund with 11 investments, including 2 in food and wine. And we recently launched a second fund for 500 million, which will continue investing in 4 most important sectors for Italian lifestyles, including food and wine, of course. So let's have a look at M&A in the sector. Over the past few years, M&A in general, not only in terms of private equity, but also in terms of operators, increased. Of course, there was a halt in 2020 due to COVID, and it started well again. Last year, we mapped 50 M&A operations in food and wine. By the end of August of 2023, we reached 29. There is an acceleration at the end of the year, so probably we will reach again 50 operations in Italy for M&A in food and wine. It is quite a relevant figure, I would say. If we have a look, the majority of these operations are carried out by private equity operators. So this data aggregates venture capital data as well. If we look at food and beverage producers, manufacturers, and retail, because some of the operational retailers are in catering, we can say that food and wine is one of the sectors where private equity invested more. Maybe this will help you, remembering the name of brands and companies who were or are still interested in private equity investments. Of course, this is for wine. It's not all of them, of course. But we wanted to highlight some of the companies, some of the main operations. They are quite a substantial number. If we look at the same detail for food, which is a bigger sector, of course, the number of operations increases. Of course, we also needed to choose the main operations only, so it's not comprehensive. So we haven't mentioned all of them. But just to help you remembering how relevant private equity was, and I guess will be very active to support managers and investors in the food and wine sector. The first question I would like to answer is why is private equity interested in food and wine? Of course, this is very, simple to understand, but it's one of the strongest sector for Made in Italy in terms of production and in terms of brands as well. It is very attractive for foreign companies. So it is very relevant and very attractive, especially abroad. Then we know that's not always the case. There's always challenges and uncertainties, but food and wine is perceived as less risky and more resilient sector. So it is not as affected by the ups and downs of macroeconomics as other sectors are. Then we have two other things to take into consideration. One is the fact that the use of digital channels is still quite limited compared to other sectors. And here, funds can help. And in spite of the figures we've seen recently, food and wine is still highly fragmented sector. So this is an incentive for private equity funds to invest and in order to build players that are more sizable and that can be competitive on a global scale. I'm talking, of course, on behalf of the Made in Italy Fund, but I'm sure this applies to other funds as well. We see room for growth in this sector, in this space, and funds will invest heavily in food and wine. When it comes to private equity, talking with managers and brands, there are two questions that always come to mind. Number one would be, does private equity really add value to this industry, and are the timings of private equity compatible with the development of long-term development?
Di lungo termine di un'azienda del settore del food and wine. Allora, partirei dalla prima.
So let's start with number one.
Senza stare a ripercorrere tutti I punti della slide, sicuramente.
I won't detail everything that's written on the slide, but I would like to underline that private equity, along with managers and entrepreneurs, invest in a project over the medium term, investing equities to support the organic growth, to support acquisitions as well. This is something we do. We've done it with the Made in Italy Fund number 1 to create groups, aggregations.
Solo finanza, anzi forse la parte di finanza è quella su cui.
And here the financial part is not as relevant. Of course, we work on it with the entrepreneurs, but we work on the commercial side and the communication side, on marketing. We work on the approach to digital channels. And since we invest in other lifestyle sector, we look at the trends, we look at what happens in other sectors of lifestyle, and we'll try to understand what are the best practices, what are the trends, and see what could be applied to food and wine as well. Of course, taking into account the specific feature of each industry. This is an example for you
piuttosto non lunghissimo portare valore.
of how private equity can add value in the food sector over the medium term. The example I chose is not very recent. I don't remember the years exactly, but we're looking at Rosso Pomodoro. This is an operation of 20 years ago, I think. 2005, we invested in 2005. We invested for 6 years until 2011. I think we were one of the first to invest in catering.
Anche l'amministratore delegato di Rosso Pomodoro oggi in una nuova veste parlerà.
And today the former CEO of Rosso Pomodoro will talk with David, so we will hear from him. So we worked on the launch abroad. We invested in training. We found new formats. We worked on communication and marketing. So we invested for 6 years, from 2005 to 2011.
Più 400% in numeri di punti vendita e più 350.
We increased significantly the number of stores, and we also increased significantly our turnover, plus 346%. So we were able to build a player that was present abroad as well as in Italy. So these are real data from our 25 years of experience in private equity. You can see that 44% of the investments we carried out lasted between 3 to 5 years. Some of them less, some of them more. So the average would be 4 years.
Della vita di un'azienda è un periodo breve,
which is a time span that is short for a company. But over the course of 4 to 5 years, especially for small and medium enterprises, if there is an alignment in terms of goals and results, if managers and funds are aligned, you can do great things. Of course, there will be another stage, new shareholders, new funds that might develop other areas. You can have another operator joining, but over the course of this time span, you can create and add value. We're almost done with the presentation, but I will circle back to something I mentioned earlier. Of course, each sector has its features, and this is even more true for the food and wine sector. There are, however, some general trends that we've seen in several lifestyle areas that also apply to food and wine. This is something that could be interesting to explore for funds. Successful brands are increasingly international, so a brand is defined as successful if it is present worldwide or in some important areas of the world. In the internet era, of course, rules are changing, so we're seeing a global pricing. In the past, there were significant differences in terms of prices between countries or continents, while the now pricing are leveling. So there is this trend of global pricing. Then we see a push towards retail, branded retail. We see that for catering, we see that for producers.
Degli esempi significativi di sviluppo di retail monomarca anche per supportare la costruzione.
To support the creation of brands.
Il tema della managerializzazione è un tema che è ovviamente
Then an increase
abbiamo visto che negli ultimi anni c'è stata una forte direzione nella
development of management skills in the companies for food and wine as well.
Incominciano a parlarsi, incominciano a integrarsi.
The different areas of lifestyle start walking together: fashion, food and wine, hospitality, beauty. We see mix and match and collaboration between among lifestyle sectors. This also implies a development of new business models. We've seen several trends in terms of production.
Ovviamente parlo di aziende produttrici anche nel settore del food. L'online ne abbiamo già.
So some internalized, some externalized production. Then we see a strong acceleration of the online channels. Of course, there is increased focus on the quality of the product.
Ma soprattutto qualitativa del tema della comunicazione e del marketing e
But communication and marketing are increasingly important, and last but not least,
importanti che peraltro c'è anche più facile ora da gestire.
This is something that is easier to manage with a digital channel. And as I was saying, companies are trying to get closer and closer to customers in order to understand the needs and the desires. To wrap it up, we expect M&A to be strong in the coming years. Foreign funds are increasingly interested in investing in Italian companies. Of course, the current economic and geopolitical situation is slowing down the prices, so we're going back to new normal.
Le valutazioni delle aziende di questo settore restano importanti, a maggior ragione per le società di maggiore qualità.
Although for quality companies the prices are still high.
Ma lo dico in ogni caso che il private equity continuerà.
We expect private equity to play an important role in the evolution of this sector.
A crescere.
We will help managers grow. Funds will, of course, need to show the ability to be true partners for entrepreneurs and managers. They will be able to support the companies in their international growth.
Un'ultima frase.
And I would like to conclude with this statement. This is something I say to all entrepreneurs I work with. When I discuss these managers, these entrepreneurs often tell me, I'm not ready to sell my company yet. This working with private equity doesn't really mean selling your company. It means finding a new partner for your development and growth. Thank you very much.